I wanted to join the army in 2014, but my son was very young. He was 5 years old, so I couldn't leave him. And in 2022, he was 13 years already. At the very beginning of war, he was with his father in Kharkiv, and he called me and said, like, if I die, know that I love you, Mom. And at this moment, like, I've been so desperate and I've been so angry. And I said, like, I'm going to win this war for my son and his kids and our grandkids and so on, because I need to give my family this country back.
Welcome to the podcast Jak ty, Ukraine Life. Jak ty means in Ukrainian, how are you? I'm your host, Luzia Tschirky, a former correspondent, now a book author and a freelancer. On this podcast, I'm always talking to a guest live from Ukraine. And the aim of this podcast is to give people in Ukraine an opportunity to share their very personal experience of Russia's full-scale invasion of the country. I am more than delighted to welcome today's guest on the podcast, Kristina Voronovska. Kristina serves in the 116th Mechanized Brigade in Ukraine as a volunteer. Kristina was sent from the front line to have a rest and is currently joining us from Kharkiv region. Kristina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Hello.
I always start this podcast with the question, how are you? How are you right now? Jak ty, Zaras?
A little bit with PTSD, a little bit depressed, but everything is all right. So yeah, we're still fighting, so no chance to step back.
A friend of mine who serves the Ukrainian army once told me that he has the impression that everyone in the Ukrainian army is suffering from PTSD. Is that your personal experience as well?
Yes, unfortunately, a lot of people suffer from PTSD, and the worst thing is that not many people can understand that they have PTSD. I'm lucky enough because before full-scale invasion, I started therapy like several years ago, so I was familiar with the signs of PTSD or anxiety or something, like when something goes wrong with me. That's a good experience for me. I used to hate this experience in my life, but nowadays I understand that it's really good because I can spot that something is going wrong. And talking to other soldiers as I'm trying to get closer to the topic of military psychology, I'm trying to, as a medic, as a person who works in the medical field, I'm talking a lot to the soldiers and especially wounded soldiers. And I see that a lot of people have PTSD in here. But as we have a bit of Soviet minds in Ukraine still, when you say that I need to go to the psychologist or I need to go to the psychiatric to talk about my mental state, people are afraid of this topic, especially soldiers. They don't want to say that I do not feel fine. And that's really bad because it's not well for the soldiers themselves. So luckily, yes, I'm aware of my state and trying to fight it because I don't want to give up. And I know that war is exhausting, but I need to stay on the front line and work as much as possible. So I wish more Ukrainian soldiers get aware about their mental state and get the normal treatment.
And what can you personally do to support your personal mental state?
Actually, I'm okay to ask the military psychologist in my brigade to talk to if I need help or just get how to say it. So I can ask our medics of the brigade to send me, for example, to the doctor, to the nearest biggest city, to see a doctor and ask for medical treatment, for example, if I need special pills like antidepressants or whatever. So I can visit professional doctors and they give me this opportunity, of course. So that's how can I do that. And also I can talk to therapists online because I have therapists I work with. Actually, I'm in another category, yes, of people who are aware of their mental state. So I can help myself, Yeah, that's why I have different options to stay normal, in plus minus normal mental state, but it's almost impossible because when you work on the front line, of course, it affects you a lot.
What made you join the Ukrainian army as a volunteer?
When I was at the first day of war, of full-scale invasion, I call it big war. Actually, I couldn't believe that it has started because it's 2022, and it's almost impossible to believe that a big war can start because we had already military actions on Donbass. And for me, it was unreasonable. On the second day of big war, I came to the military office and said, okay, I'm ready to join the army. And they look at me and oh, babe, you're like, you didn't have military experience. And no, sorry. And they're like, you can't join because we need those people who have military experience. And I became a volunteer. First year of war, I was driving back and forth from the front line, like from calm cities right to the front line, helping soldiers, helping civilians. In 2023, I moved to Donetsk Oblast and started to live in Kramatorsk and be a frontline volunteer in there. So I used to work in evacuations and volunteer evacuations, medical evacuations, also with civilians, with militaries, etc., etc. And I was all these 2 years like in a row, I was trying to make myself an access to the army, to the combat brigade, like the one who fights, like not staying somewhere in the headquarters. And it was hard as I'm a woman, and like it's not very easy to get to the front line when you're a woman, because everybody's like, oh, you're a girl, you need to stay at home and cook borscht, and it was hard. But at last I've got the access and I found my ideal brigade. And in 2024, at the end of March, I signed my contract at last. So actually, it was a long journey.
What were the reactions from your close friends and your family when you told them that you signed the contract and then you were joining like the army officially?
They expected that because my family left Ukraine at the very beginning of war. And I'm very lucky because I'm not worried about my family, especially my son, because I wanted him to be in a more calm countries without war. And so they have expected me joining the army, but it took time. So they were worried before when being a volunteer and living in Donetsk Oblast and going to hotspots. They were already worried, but nowadays I've just said that, yes, I need to sign a contract and everything's going to be fine. And they believe me. They support me. So they just pray, of course, but they're happy that I made this decision.
When your family left Ukraine, you as a woman, you could leave as well. What made you stay?
I wanted to join the army in 2014, but my son was very young. He was 5 years old, so I couldn't leave him. I was divorced already, so I couldn't expect that I could leave like my son to my family and go to war. And in 2022, he was 13 years already. That's why I've decided that it's like kind of personal. Because at the very beginning of war, he was with his father in Kharkiv, and he called me and said, like, if I die, know that I love you, Mom. And at this moment, like, I've been so desperate and I've been so angry. And I said, like, okay, it's personal now. And I'm going to win this war for my son and his kids and our grandkids and so on, because I need to give my family this country back. Because it's still like, I don't want my family to come back right now, because it's still sometimes dangerous. And I don't want them to live in this like nervous environments and dangerous environments. Actually, I'm just fighting for my family and for my friends who are still alive, and those friends who are already dead because they gave their lives to this country, to protect this country. And that is why it's just a strong motivation, patriotic motivation maybe, because like I understand that Ukraine nowadays is fighting not only for our country, we are fighting for the whole world. As I see it, if we lose, we can show that terrorism is all right, that terrorism is a winner in this world. And I don't want that. I want to show everyone that it's not all right to attack another country. It's not all right to start a war or conflict. It's not all right to use weapons when you need something. We need to sit and talk. And if you start war and if you start using weapons, you're going to be punished. That's why, that's my motivation, to show the whole world that we have to be in peaceful times, not in war, because it's it's ridiculous.
When you look back on your time you served in the Ukrainian army, what would you say? When was the moment that you turned from a civilian person to a military person?
I'm still half civilian, half military, because still I'm not a fan of army systems sometimes, because I'm still, that girl, a volunteer girl who is like, come on, let's go forward. And in the army, I have to follow rules. But actually, I love army because that's why I wanted to go to combat brigades and in combat units, just because it's a little bit easier in here because people still understand that we need to fight. You know, when you're saying like somewhere in the headquarters, somewhere in the west of Ukraine, there are too many roles which I cannot hold. I cannot send them. I'm not a military girl, but I'm a fighter. And that's why I understand that my place in the army right now, and I'm happy to be in here. I'm happy to be in here. So though I have civilian state of mind, I'm totally military.
How would you describe, like, if there is such as an average day serving in the army, how does that look like for you?
It depends on where I am. Sometimes I work like 40, 50 kilometers away from the front line. And it's a super easy and super calm day. I just treat soldiers who have concussions or like small injuries. And it's super, super nice because it's even sometimes not what I wanted to do. But when I go to the front line, for example, for instance, in Kupiansk and work at stabilization points, that's where I love to work, not because I love wounded people. Do not think like that, but because I feel that I can be useful. I can be useful in there. I can do something. I can grow. I can be better, and show the result because I came actually here to help wounded soldiers. That was my idea even in 2014, though I do not have medical education, but I've done everything to become a medic, a small medic, like, not a real medic, not the one who has a medical education, but at least to help these professional medics, to work. So I'm kind of nurse at stabilization points. And here, like where I rest at a small hospital, like let's call it like that. So I'm just a nurse, but at least I can do something. I can do something for people who do the real magic, who take people out of their other world, because in stabilization point, we treat like small injuries, and also we have like very hard injured people. That's why it depends. My ordinary day in Kupiansk, of course, is much more nervous and is much more dangerous. And of course, there are lots of weapons and lots of strange things happening. But actually, I'm always focused on what I have to do. And that is why I do not pay attention on what's happening outside, except those moments when I need to be attentive to escape from death, actually.
You hadn't have any medical experience before you joined the Ukrainian army, if I understood you correctly. How does one teach oneself all these different things you need to know now when you're working?
I used to study tactical medicine in 2023 when I first got on my volunteer evac missions, medical missions. So first I was like looking at the medics and like, wow, they're doing so great. And then I started to study tactical medicine, and then I started to train, and then I started to work. And after I joined army, I went through basic education for militaries we have in Ukraine, like the one that is obligatory. And I came to my brigade, and they were like, okay, you want to be a combat medic or you want to study medicine? At least, though I cannot be a professional like civilian medic or the one like surgeon or anesthesiologist, I cannot. But I can study tactical medicine, of course. There are no requirements for me to have a medical education. So my brigade gave me an opportunity to study for 2 weeks individually here at the brigade, here on the front line. That was like an amazing experience because they paid so much attention to my knowledge. They gave me so much knowledge in here on the ground. And as I had experience before, plus this knowledge, additional knowledge and additional individual training. So it became much easier right now. And I want to grow in tactical medicine. And I hope my brigade gives me an opportunity to work more on tactical medicine because that's what I love, actually.
I assume that you try your very best to save everyone who comes to the stabilization point. How do you deal with situations when you cannot do anything anymore for a person and when a soldier dies in the stabilization point? How do you deal with that?
I was super lucky because no one was dead while I was at work. Not because of me, because of the professional medics. I was lucky. I have never seen like someone died in front of me. Yes, I've seen dead bodies. Yes, I've seen those who are dead, but they were dead before I saw them. So I was lucky. I don't know. God protects me.
That sounds really like you got very lucky. I'm very glad that you never been in such a situation. Medics are attacked, especially by the Russian army. Medics are unfortunately a target in this war. How do you deal with the danger that medics are a target in this war?
I can do nothing. I just can study because I can study about strategy and tactics of war. So as for me, it's very important. Though I now work in stabilization points, I hope one day I'm gonna choose and be in evacuation missions, in army evacuation missions, and that's why I have to study a lot. So how to drive a car, for instance, in a dangerous zone, though I'm not a driver usually in the teams, but of course I need to know how to do it because if something happens with the driver, so I need to know how drones work. I need to know how artillery works, and that can a little bit reduce the danger. So when you're at least prepared and knowledge, then you can be more ready to the dangerous situation. That's why we cannot ignore knowledge, okay, if to say not that precisely. And we can do nothing with that. Unfortunately, for me, it's kind of not scary, but it's so damn strange that you attack medics and those evacuation teams. It's impossible to understand why. Like, it's not fair. It's not like in a humanitarian rights. It's not okay, but we cannot change anything. The enemy is really, really nasty. The enemy, I don't think that there was such a brutal enemy in the whole history of wars in 20th and 21st century.
Where can you get this knowledge you're aiming to achieve so that you can once in the future work in evacuation teams? Where can you get that knowledge?
First of all, I was lucky while I was working as a volunteer in 2023 in different teams, especially I had an experience to work for 3 months in a team which really professional. Those guys were really crazy in what they were doing, and it's an honor to have a knowledge from them. And of course, a lot of knowledge I try to get from those guys who have practical knowledge and who have experience, because even if you read the books or download different apps, which are enough in here in Ukraine, we have different apps, different online services and all the rest, and YouTube to get the knowledge, but it's only theory. So the best thing is to talk to those guys who do their job and to get the knowledge from them, because their success and their experience, you can measure their experience with the success of the extraction they had. And you can ask how to do this, how to do that, what's your experience, but never rely on others' experience. You have to think precisely, because each situation on the front line every time is really different. It's super different. And you cannot rely oh, I was told that in this case, you have to know what's in this case other people were doing or what's written in the book, for instance. But you have to measure the reality that you have. So as for me, the best recipe is to get theory, by videos, by textbooks, apps, and so on, get the experience of other people. And then in critical moments, your brain is and I see the exit of this risky situation. I see what we can do in this situation, and you act. Because there is a very popular saying that in the risky moment, you do what you've been taught to do. Your brain, because you cannot think a lot, your brain just, acts and gives the signs to your body what to do. So you have to be prepared in many, many things.
But there is no training you could join, a training especially for becoming, a worker in these evacuation missions. There is no special training for you available you could join, so you would have the knowledge.
So if the commanders decide that I need to go to the training, of course I will need to go to the training, but it depends if they decide, because it depends on the gaps in my knowledge which I have. So if there is a training for that, I can go. If not, let's work. It depends.
You told in the beginning that you already would have liked to join the Ukrainian army in 2022, but back then you were told that you have no experience and they were looking for people with experience. Looking back, you have the impression that if you would have been a man, they would have treated you differently. Did you ever feel like there was kind of a different way they approached you because you are a woman?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course, because as you can see in the news right now, they grab lots of men out of the streets, and they do not take too many women. And while I was trying to go through this military office in 2024, they even were reading my, how it's called in English, I don't know, but a recommendation letter from one of the brigades where they were trying to see if I'm going to the combat unit inside the brigade or not, because they didn't want me to go to combat unit. So later I've signed the contract with the combat brigade in the combat unit and everything was fine. But a lot of people try to stop you from going to the front line if you're a woman. Though there are so many stories about successful service of women in Ukrainian army, like on the front line. And we have to accept that. But still, there is kind of, Soviet state of mind, or I don't know why it's happening, but still, men sometimes tell me that I'm not okay that you're a woman and you're here. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because I was like, I came here to protect you like a woman, and you come here to protect me. It's strange. And as for me, it's kind of Soviet state of mind. In Ukraine, we cannot say that we have enough women in the army. There are around like 40 or 50,000 of women in the Ukrainian army and more than 1 million men. It's not okay. We are not allowed to come. No one will say they will say thank you for joining the army. But they will say but why did you do that? Why did you have family? You have raised your kids. But okay, I'm Ukrainian nationalist and it's my choice. That's it.
What will you say? Will you support if military service would become mandatory for women as well in Ukraine? Would you support that personally?
Depends on the professions, because for now they mobilize women who are cookers, I think, and medics. Cookers and medics. And that's it. But, in my humble opinion, actually, I don't want to be something mandatory because people are afraid to go to the front line. In my opinion, our governments and our military service should work on making army more, how to say it, for people to like it, because lots of people, volunteers, have joined army at the first months of war or first year of war or later, but they were volunteers. Why did we do that? Because we wanted to fight for our country. And even people were like, oh, you will hate army. But I was on the positive sides of the service. And that is why I was ready. Though I knew the negative side, I was ready to, because I knew also the positive side. So if our military service and our government showed the positive side and helps this positive side to be bigger, then I think people will come voluntarily. Because while I'm serving, I'm telling my friends, for instance, that army is this and that, these are pluses, these are minuses, this is good, this is bad. And my friends, for instance, and my acquaintances, they're like, nice, thank you for the information. So I'm giving them the information from the inside. And actually, I cannot say that they refuse to fight. They're like, okay, I need to think on which brigade to choose, or I need to think on which profession to choose inside the army. So they think, when they have these pluses and minuses, they do not think, oh, I don't want to go to the army. They think I need to do my choice precisely and then join. And that's good, right? Because mandatory means that people are not that motivated in what they're doing. And that's not all right. They're trying to escape from the service. They're trying to pay someone money to become kind of a person with disabilities and so on and so on. It's super strange and it doesn't tell good about my country. So maybe we can change the situation with the changing mindset and changing the situation in the army itself.
How is your personal situation as a woman in the army concerning, the equipment you got? Do you have special equipment made for the body of a woman, or how does that look like at the very moment for you?
Thanks to my supporters and those people who know me as a volunteer for a long time, they helped me to equip myself. That was the first time I was asking money for myself. And I said, guys, I need a special equipment. I need a special uniform. I need something which I can be, feel cozy and work as much as possible. Because unfortunately, we are not given in every brigade, we are not given the uniform for women or equipment for women, so we have to buy it by ourselves. Though I have to mention that sometimes even men, when they receive something in the army, they still buy themselves equipment. So because of the quality, right? Every soldier wants to, who really fights, they want something a bit better quality. That's what we're given now. It's not bad. It's just because we're given something that is good for everyone. But when you want to keep yourself, of course, you love yourself, so you're trying to buy yourself something better.
When female friends of you heard that you have joined the Ukrainian army, would you say that you became like someone, people look up to? Maybe other friends of you thought about joining the army after you have joined? What were like the reactions of your friends?
They were like, okay, you go to the army and then tell us if we need to join.
And what did you tell them?
I told them that it's hard to go through this basic training just for me because it was very hard psychologically for me. I came from the front line. I came to the basic training and I was like, okay, what are you going to tell me? Not because I'm, think I'm a princess of war, but because like a little bit, I knew something and I was like, I was ready to go to fight. I was already to go to fight. And I had to spend 2 months for training. And I was like, no way, dear. And yeah, for me, it was like the worst time in the army because it took 2 months. It was too long for me. But I understand that it's good for people who are not prepared at all. Because I was familiar with the weapon. I used to work on the polygon, train on the polygon before. So I was a little bit confident, And like not many people like knew what they are expecting in the army. Well, I just told my friend that you need to go through these 2 months and then everything is going to be all right.
And did any friends of you join after you have joined the Ukrainian army?
I knew several people. They're not like, my friends, my closest friends. They're just acquaintances. And yes, I know some people who have joined after that, but not many.
What would you say, when you joined the army, did you ever think about how long you're going to serve? And looking back, would you have expected that you would serve this long?
I have contract for 3 years, but in this contract, they mentioned that if the war doesn't stop after these 3 years of service, they will renew my contract. That is why I'm actually ready to stay as much as possible. I hope to stay alive and, with all my limbs. So if I'm all right, I can serve as much as possible, but I need to get the victory. So that's the statement. Victory is my goal. So no matter how long it takes, I just need to serve until we are winners.
Are you expecting that you're still serving, after your contract would be over?
I'm not sure yet. It depends on the situation and it depends on help of our partners. It depends on help of the whole world. It only depends on how much weapon we get and how much support we're going to have. Because unfortunately, we cannot stand alone. Ukraine it's impossible to win if no one supports us.
What you say that what is the bigger problem, what you see at your brigade? Is it the number of weapons or the number of soldiers?
In the Ukrainian army itself, the biggest problem is not enough weapon. Of course, people are important, but we still have so many dedicated people that even if you give us enough weapon, they will shoot. They will do everything. Just give enough weapon. And by the way, I think that if Ukraine gets enough weapon, then there are going to be more people who are going to join army and see that we are becoming a better army and a better equipped army. So more people will join us.
Just for listeners who heard the sound in the background, are you joined by a dog? Do you have your dog with you, or is there the dog at the place you're staying? Who's that dog barking in the background?
Well, I have with me, I have Karl Gustav. Karl Gustav is the dog which was found near Kupiansk. My friends helped me to find this ideal puppy. They just said, okay, there are puppies which we need to rescue. Are you gonna be a dog mother? And I'm like, I need to rescue a puppy. So yeah, I have Karl Gustav and I have his girlfriend. We came from Kupiansk and recently, and he found their girlfriend in here. Actually, they knew each other before, but now they have, I think, love.
Okay, so you are actually joined by a dog while you're serving in the army, so you can have a dog.
It makes sometimes it makes problem because Karl Gustav follows me everywhere, and he's not allowed to go to the manipulation rooms, where we treat soldiers. So he has to stay at the house. But of course, if you have people around who are okay, that dog stays with you, it's not a problem because he's my mental supporter. He's my psychological supporter. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's a dog. Can I hug your dog? And when we in Ukraine, and especially soldiers, we're keen on animals. We're keen on dogs. We're keen on cats. We have Some of us have in the house like 3, 4, 5 cats, 3 dogs, 2 dogs, like 5 cats and 3 dogs. It depends on how you can take care after them. Because, we're keen on animals. They help us. And we love them.
So it's like your mental support animal.
Yes. Because when I see him, and he's like playing with me and like ask for food, for example, he's so cute. So it helps me to reduce his stress, because I have someone to take care of. And of course I take care about soldiers, but also it's nice to take care about the dog.
Can you briefly explain? The name sounds not very Ukrainian. What's the name of the dog? And is that your idea to name the dog like this?
It was really strange. I woke up in the morning. I knew that soon I'm going to get this puppy. I was on the left bank of Kupiansk, so I couldn't afford to take him there. It was like very dangerous for him. So I was waiting for my small rest, to have a small rest for several weeks to pick up the puppy. And I woke up in the morning and I was like, I need to name this dog Karl Gustav. It's like a grenade launcher. And I'm like, but what an idiot names a dog after a grenade launcher? Like, okay, so I was thinking about the name, and then I wrote my friend who had to give me this puppy, who found this puppy. Like, I cannot imagine the name for the dog. And he was like, you have to name him Karl Gustav. And I'm like, okay, 2 idiots want to name a dog after a grenade launcher. So, okay, his name is Karl Gustav. We call him Karl, we call him Carlito, we call him Carlos. So he has different names, but yes, he's named after a grenade launcher.
Okay, so how is the dog who's named after a grenade launcher dealing like with explosions?
Actually, I'd say that he's like totally all right when something comes near, because recently we had together an experience when an air bomb dropped near our place, and it was really hard for him because he was scared. But actually, only because it came near and all the windows were blown up in the house, and it was like very, very, very scary for him. But if it's not incoming somewhere near us, he's all right. He's used to it. He's just like, oh, explosions. Okay, I need to have food. That's it.
Does it help like for you when you see that he's like going on with his life, thinking about food while an explosion happened? Does that help you personally also?
Yeah, because I focus, I love to take care about everything, about people, about animals, about nature, whatever. Just give me an opportunity to take care. And that is why when I see that he's like going on with his life and I can proceed with taking care of him, and when I have free time from work, so and I see other people taking care of him or just smiling at him, hugging him, like having fun with him, it makes me happy. I understand that there is something better in the life, even though it is war, it's like not that bad. It could be worse. While our animals and our families are alive and our brothers and sisters in arms are alive, still everything goes fine.
People who are listening to this podcast, like the audience of this podcast is, privileged people who are living in a country that is not war-torn, a country where it's peaceful outside and no bombs are falling, no shelling happening. People are asking themselves, I'm quite sure, about how do you actually walk a dog in a war zone? So on an average day, dogs need several walks. How do you do that when you're working?
Well, actually, if we live in a house, for instance, when owners of the house who left, they sometimes let us live in the house. So I can just like open the door and say like, walk. And he goes in the yard and having fun, or even walking on the street with his friends, other dogs. So he just having fun. He enjoys life and he knows where he comes back to have food. Yes, of course, I had several situations when I was running around the street and like, Carlito, come back. I love you. I don't want to lose you. But I found him, he was just having fun with another dog on the nearest street, So he had his own life. Come on, everything's fine. So luckily, we have an opportunity. We're not living in flats, actually, because it's very dangerous. So we are trying to live or somewhere in the dugouts or somewhere in the houses. It depends on the situation. So we have an opportunity to have dogs and let them walk. So it's not a problem. It's not the biggest problem. But actually, for those people who do not know what's happening in the war zone, know that till the very end, even when lots of mortars landing somewhere in the area, shops still work. people still sell you food, sell you like something like hygiene or whatever. Ukrainians are is a very strange nation, because you still can see civilian people, even like sometimes I'm like, it's a left bank of Kupiansk. It's super dangerous in here. Like FPV drones flying around, mortars landing everywhere. And the lady on the bicycle goes by and like, good morning. And like, what? Like, why don't you leave this territory? Like, what's happening with you, lady? They are right with that. And they're like, oh, if you need potatoes, just come to my house. I live there. I can give you potatoes. Thank you, soldiers, for protecting us. That's Ukrainians. Crazy people, really.
How far, for people who are not familiar with the front line, how far is the left bank of Kupiansk from the front line?
Well, actually, the front line. So we live right now, like the rest of the world lives on the right bank. And then when you cross the river, there's left bank starts. And actually, it's like, it depends on the situation. But actually, it's the beginning of the left bank. It's like 3 kilometers away from Russians. Nowadays, even less, maybe. It depends on how the situation on the front line goes.
People were following at least a little bit how the front line, developed during the last few weeks and months. They most probably came across the situation that the Russians are actually advancing. How are you personally dealing with the fact that the Russian army advanced at several front lines?
They used to assault in here also in Kupiansk, and it was a bit scary, of course, because we don't want to lose the left bank, because it will mean that we will need to work a lot to take it back later, and it's not an option. And of course, putting in danger lots of army people, it's also not an option. So it's like half and half. But luckily, we have succeeded with pushing them back a bit. And that's good news. So it's like something that gives you hope that everything's going to be all right. It's not all right in Donetsk Oblast, of course, because I have lots of people in there, and we see like what's happening in there. I'm more positive on my area, and I hope we're going to do better. And I hope, I always believe that something like God will help us, because God exists, I hope. And I know that. It's very hard in Donetsk Oblast. But the trick is that when you read news and see news, it's always like when you're not here, you cannot understand the whole situation, right? And in here, when I'm here, like even small success for me, it's like it turns into a bigger success in my mind. Because for me, like even when we have like 10 centimeters of free lands, it's like, whoop. But for people like who read news, they do not understand this, small success. They want to see like deliberated territory. It's impossible. It's possible when we have enough weapons and enough support.
Are you sometimes trying just to focus on the very positive things that you have like energy? Does that give you like more strength to carry on what you're doing?
Yes, of course. You cannot be always positive, especially when you work in medicine. You see that people are injured. Of course, you're like, oh. But yes, I'm trying to find positive moments. It's strange, but it's the only thing that pushes you forward. And this focus on victory, on getting this victory, that's what moves me forward. Because I'm still, call me crazy, but I believe in victory. Like some people are like, oh, it's impossible to get the territories back, and I'm like, just trust. There is something bigger than we are, and there is something bigger what wants us to win, because we are fighting for the light. We are fighting for the good cause. We are protecting. So why do we have to lose?
Did you become like more religious during the war, you personally?
I'm not super religious, but a believer, because I saw lots of situations where, like in my own life, when I was like even a volunteer, and then I was attacked by Russian weapon, and it was like directed into our group, for instance, into our volunteer group, and I said like, nothing can help me now. But then like something like a small situation, and we're escaping from death, And after that, I've decided that, yes, something bigger exists, and something bigger maybe wants me to proceed. So I need to work.
How do you keep like contact with your family who left Ukraine? How are you keeping up with them? Are you calling them? How you get in touch with them?
I'm calling them, of course. I'm talking with my son a lot. I used to see them twice already during the big war. So I had like vacations. So I left Ukraine and saw them, but I was allowed to go out. Nowadays, of course, to go abroad, I need to ask my commanders, and I need to get special permission that I'm going abroad. But luckily, I have kind of trust, from my commanders. They know that I'm gonna come back. I just need to see my son. I just need to spend my time with my family, and then, of course, I'm ready to fight. I'm not gonna escape, and that's not my style.
How was that for you, not leaving the country, seeing other European countries living? People their peaceful life there? How was that for you coming from the war zone?
I'm doing my job for those people to live. And thanks to them, my family enjoys my life right now. That is why I'm happy to see that Europe is calm right now. I'm happy because my family first, they moved to Israel. And then in 2023, again, the Brigade was started and they had to move because we had relatives in there and they had to move to Europe right now. I'm happy. I'm really happy. For example, my mom also lives in Europe right now. And I'm happy that my family can live there calmly. And I want that not only for my family, because a lot of my friends live in Europe. Some of them used to live in Europe before war. And nowadays, I have lots of friends from around the world. And I want them to enjoy peaceful life. Because when they enjoy peaceful life, my friends, for instance, and everybody who support me, they do not forget about war. They always in touch. They always help. They send help. They send aid. They send donations. So they're not I'm not jealous that they live peaceful life. I want them to live peaceful life, be productive and do whatever they like. But I know that they won't leave me alone in here. They won't forget about me. They won't forget about my army. They won't forget about my nation. They will help me. Why not? And one day, I always say that you're all invited to the barbecue in Crimea, because one day we're going to party in here. And that's my job to bring that day. And my friends and my acquaintances, they think that their job is to help me while I'm here. So it's common goal. So it's all right. Just live your peaceful life because Europe had Ukraine also, but Europe had this history of First and Second World War, and Europe do not forget about that, and you had already an experience which was very painful, and that is why I thank to all Europeans who support us and know that Ukraine has to win. So the only thing I ask from people from around the world, do not forget about this war, do not become blind. Help us, please, stay with us, and that's gonna pray for us at least. And that's going to help us. One day we're going to win. And one day you're going to party with us in here and restructure this country, make it even better. Because my dream, not only to get victory, my dream is to build my country afterwards. So we become, a great partner for Europe, for United States of America, and for the rest of the country who are against terrorism. One day, Ukraine is going to be a good partner. After all these adventures and after all this bad history we have right now, we're going to have lessons which will help us to become a good partner for the rest of the world and keep away all the terrorism and all this bullshit like Russia or North Korea or whatever you name, those bullshit guys. Sorry for my English.
After all what you have seen, after your personal experience at the front line, after your family was forced to flee twice, first to Israel and then even further to Europe, have you the impression that whatever comes next in life, you're prepared because you've seen already so much?
Yes, because I'm Ukrainian, I'm a warrior. We're a warrior nation. That is why we're a nation of winners and we're a nation of fighters, and it's all right for us. Not all right, of course. It's not all right to have the war in 2024 still. But I mean that we can go through it. We can go through. Though I've lost so many people, so many friends of mine are injured, so they became people with disabilities. I've seen lots of. I'm so sorry, but I've seen lots of shit. But still, I'm positive just because I have to keep going. Why I have to say that? Okay, I'm done. No, otherwise, why we've been fighting for almost 3 years in this big war? If I step back, if my friends step back, if everyone steps back, what's going to be next? Countries like Russia will take the lead in the world, but it's an evil, a real evil, which you have to fight with.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Kristina Voronovska, thank you for being such an inspiration. And I'm sure everyone is in just awe of your personal strength. Thank you so much.
Thank you.